Hi, everybody. How you doing today? Oh, come on. You can do better than that. How is everybody on this beautiful day? There we go. I mean, come on. We are at the Four Seasons. Maybe that's not a big deal to some of you. For me, that's a very big deal, and I'm so happy to be here. And thank you to the CARP community for making me feel so welcome. Can you all hear me, or is it echoing? You can hear me? Good thumbs up in the back? Okay, great. Thank you to the CARP community for making me feel so welcome. Thanks to my old friend, and he is old, Carl Nicola. Just kidding. He's also got a rockin' mustache, in case you haven't seen it. See, when Carl left New York, he didn't have the mustache. He comes to Palm Beach, he grows a mustache, and I think he's rocking it, which is great. Thank you also to Michelle Lutz and Margaret Luce, both of whom have made me feel very special since I got here a couple of days ago, both of whom have worked really hard and continue to work hard on CARP's behalf each and every day. So thanks to you ladies very much for what you do. I used to party here in Palm Beach. I really did. This is a great place to get wasted, isn't it? For those of you who drink, I mean, it's a fun party place. 23 years ago, when I started dating the man who would later become my ex-husband, he lived here in Palm Beach while we were dating. One of my first memories of Palm Beach was getting wasted at Charlie's Crab over a delicious dinner, and then taking his boat out, because there's just nothing better than being drunk and taking a boat out on the water, right? Well, that was a long time ago, and I'm happy to be here sober, talking to you today. I want to start with a story about a woman whom I know very well. This woman and her boyfriend were about to go out for the evening. They lived in New York City, and they were planning a big night out. So before they went out to dinner, the woman was getting ready in their apartment. She was putting on her makeup, getting dressed, doing her hair. On her dressing table, she had a glass of vodka with ice in it and a couple of lines of cocaine just to get the night going. Then during dinner, she and her boyfriend drank 2 or 3 bottles of wine. Then after dinner, they went to a hotel bar, drank some after dinner drinks, doing a little cocaine in the bathroom just for good measure. Then they decided to take the party back to their apartment. And in the course of the next few hours, this woman and her boyfriend proceed to drink as much alcohol as they can get their hands on, do a little cocaine, smoke a little marijuana, pop a Xanax just to come down, drink more to come back up, maybe smoke a little more pot to come back down, and on and on. Well, this wasn't exactly the first time that this woman had done that, but this was the first time that she became unconscious. And she was found on the floor of her kitchen, face down, by her boyfriend a few hours later. She woke up in the hospital emergency room, having no idea how she got there or why she was there. As the doctor was handing her her discharge papers to sign, he said, "You're very lucky you're alive." So the woman went home to sleep it off. Do you think she got sober after that? Nope. She kept drinking and drugging for 2.5 more years. That is the insanity of addiction. I am, of course, talking about myself. That was my life for the better part of 6,000 days. When I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about drinking, recovering from a drink, planning the next time I could get drunk. It wasn't much of a life at all. And almost dying wasn't enough for me to get it. But in the end, drugs and alcohol actually saved my life. Let me explain. What I'm sharing with you today is kind of a love story. It's a love story about me and alcohol and drugs. It's a relationship that started off beautifully, as so many relationships do. Alcohol and drugs gave me everything I ever wanted. They were my best friend, my lover, my employer. After all, my whole life revolved around drinking. And of course, like any relationship, it started to sour. It was a relationship that eventually took me to a very, very dark place, a place where I almost died. But I woke up without a hangover today, which is something that a lot of you know. A lot of you know what it's like to wake up without a hangover and feel good and remember what you did last night and who you talked to and the dinner that you enjoyed and the conversation you had. I stand before you very humbled to say that I woke up sober, and that's something I've done for the last 3,647 days. Thank you. And I'm really excited to say that in 3 days' time, on March 14th, I will have 10 years sober, which feels really great. Because if you had told me 10 years ago that I was never going to drink or drug again, I would have said you were crazy. You're here today because you care about addiction and you understand the scourge of this disease that has killed far too many people. You're here because you care about people dying. You're here because you support CARP, you support people in your own community who are in recovery, and you support the 23 to 25 million Americans who are suffering from the disease of addiction. Imagine if 23 or 25 million people had cancer in this country. Can you imagine the outrage? Well, that's how many people suffer from addiction. But unfortunately, because of the shame and the stigma that's attached to this disease, we don't often get the kind of attention that we should. This disease costs this country and everybody in this room, all you taxpayers, $500 billion a year. That's a lot of money. That's too much money. Too many people are dead from this disease, and it's not okay. And as we learned with the AIDS epidemic, silence equals death. That applies very much to the disease of addiction. It affects every single American family. Every person in this room is touched by addiction. Maybe it's not in your nuclear family, but maybe it's a good friend. Maybe it's your pastor or your rabbi. Maybe it's your colleague or your great aunt or your child. This disease touches everyone. And that's why I have been very public with my recovery the last 6 years. I think that if we stay silent, more people will die. And that's not okay with me. Most people tell me that I don't look like an alcoholic. I think that many people believe an alcoholic is an old man, and forgive me, all you men of advanced age in this room. I think a lot of people think that alcoholics are old men in trench coats clutching a paper bag of whiskey living under a bridge somewhere. And while there may be those alcoholics out there, alcoholics also look like me. I am the face of addiction. And I am the face of recovery. One of 25 million faces of recovery. This disease does not discriminate. This disease doesn't care that I had a loving family and a beautiful childhood and went to private school and went to debutante parties and had a big career and had my own show on all the cable networks. It didn't care. It doesn't care. As we say in New York, it's Park Avenue to Park Bench, and everyone in between. I knew how to package myself. So every time you saw me on TV, for those of you who did, and I was with CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News for many, many years, I knew how to present myself perfectly. For the 1 million or 2 million people who might watch me on any given evening, what they saw was a woman who was perfectly put together, who had nice hair and makeup, maybe a nice outfit on, who was confidently delivering the news. What you didn't see, but what I knew and knew for many years, was that I was dying on the inside. I was what they call a high-functioning alcoholic. But it's kind of crazy because how functioning could I actually have been? When several mornings a week I was so hungover that I literally could not sit up straight at my desk. That an hour before going on national television, I might be curled up in the fetal position under my desk at CNN or Fox News Channel because I couldn't lift my head. And somehow, I would pick myself off the floor of my office. I would go back down to hair and makeup, get retouched, and I would say a silent prayer so many times as I walked into the TV studio. This may sound familiar to some of you who are in recovery. God, if you get me through this, I'll never do it again. Now, every single time I would get through my show, hopefully without a mistake, maybe one or two, but I fooled everybody again. And what do you think I did? Did I go home to celebrate making it through, thanking God for his or her help, and maybe reevaluate my lifestyle? Of course not. I would celebrate getting through the show by getting drunk again. That is the insanity of this disease. I used to like to say that I didn't trust people who didn't drink. Thank you. Isn't that crazy? Carl, that was you. I didn't trust people who didn't drink. That's crazy. I remember being out on a date at this fabulous restaurant in New York that's no longer there called La Galou. Maybe some of you know it. And I was getting quite drunk with a very handsome guy. We were sharing our second or third bottle of wine, and he said to me, you know, I don't trust people who don't drink. And I said, I don't either. And we high-fived each other over the fact that we had found each other. Ridiculous. And I was also really good at drinking. I'm not a little girl. I'm just under 6 feet tall, and I won't tell you what I weigh, but I'll put it this way, I could put away a lot of alcohol. I like to say that I drank like one of the boys. And I wore that like a badge of honor. I could drink like one of the men. In fact, I can outdrink every man in this room. And crazily, that was something I was proud of. It is funny. Thank you, Carl, for laughing again, because it is really, really ridiculous. And it didn't matter. I drank the way I wanted, whenever I wanted. The consequences be damned. No matter what the situation was, even if it was wildly inappropriate. And I'd like to share a couple of those wildly inappropriate moments with you so that you get an idea of just how bad it was. I was drunk when I met the sitting president of the United States. I was invited to a private reception to meet Bush 43 before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And I'm not going to get political here. Some people might say, well, if I had met that president, I might have been drunk too. But it was embarrassing, because I had had too much to drink in my hotel room getting ready for this private reception. I'd done a little cocaine up in my room. I thought I was so cool and so interesting and would make such a great impression on the president. Well, the moment came around to when you get your photo with the president. And those of you in this room, I know many of you probably have been lucky enough to meet presidents. There is that moment of the photo op, where you pose with a picture and then you have it forever and you put it in your living room. Maybe you send it out on Christmas cards. You're very proud of this photo. Well, the moment when I met President Bush, I looked so unattractive because I was wasted. I roughly looked something like this, and hopefully some of you can see in the back, but it was like, those of you in the front, let's just say it was a very unattractive pose. It was so bad that my mother, when she saw the picture, said, well, I can't put this up in the living room. So it never went up. I guess meeting the President of the United States wasn't reason enough for me to be sober. Then there's the Dick Cheney story. I was at a party that Fox News channel was having, and there were a lot of VIPs at this party, including the then Vice President, Dick Cheney. And I was talking with Mr. Cheney, and Rupert Murdoch, who is the chairman of Fox News and News Corp, was on the other side of me. And a photographer said, oh, Laurie, would you stand between Mr. Murdoch and Mr. Cheney? And of course I didn't put my drink down. I mean, why would I put my drink down just to pose with the vice president and my boss? But I held the drink in my hand, and as I posed for the photo, I flung my arm around Dick Cheney. Like you would in a fraternity party picture. Now, Joe Biden, you could throw your arm around. Dick Cheney, I am sure he was thinking to himself, how do I evaporate her? Fortunately, he was very gracious. Then there were the things that I simply didn't remember happening. And there is a Joe Biden story. I was having brunch with a girlfriend of mine about 3 years ago, and we were reminiscing about old times. And we were talking about the crazy things we'd done in our lives, and she said, God, do you remember the Joe Biden night? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, what, the Joe Biden night? And she said, you don't remember? And I said, please refresh my memory. What happened with Joe Biden? And she said, well, Laurie, you took it upon yourself to go over to his table. This is at a restaurant in New York. You proceeded to go over to his table to engage him in conversation while he was having a private dinner with his wife. Now, I had interviewed him when he was Senator Joe Biden many times, including some times when I reported from the Middle East for Fox News. I had the chance to interview a lot of people, and Senator Biden was there, and we had a very cordial relationship over the years. I don't remember that at all. No recollection of going to his table and attempting to talk to him. Then there was the 8-day trip to Spain that I don't remember taking. Right. Exactly. This beautiful young lady in the front just went, oh, that's right. I drank my way through Spain. I have a vague recollection of checking into a beautiful hotel in Madrid. I have a vague recollection of being kicked out of a poolside bar in Mallorca. And that's it. When I got my American Express bill, it showed all the different cities that I had been to, and I didn't remember any of them. An 8-day blackout. It's not much of a life. But there's no logic when it comes to addiction. It's a confounding disease. It's a cunning, baffling, patient disease. That kind of behavior went on for years and years until I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, as they say. The jig was up, and I knew something had to give. And one of the biggest catalysts for me making the decision to get sober was my sister's pregnancy. This was 10 years ago. My sister was pregnant with the family's first child, the first grandchild, and everyone was so excited. And I woke up and I thought, you know, I have a reason to get sober now. This unborn baby is going to give me the chance to start my life over again. Because I want this unborn baby to have a good relationship with his or her aunt, to have a loving aunt who shows up for ballet recitals and christenings and soccer games. Well, that unborn baby is 9.5, and his name is Robert. And he has a 6.5-year-old brother named Thomas, who are my pride and joy in life. If I had kept going the way I was going, I never would have met my 2 nephews. No, I was terrified at first because I didn't think I could live without drinking. My fear of not knowing how to quit put off my decision for a long time. But as I later came to understand, nothing changes if nothing changes. Right? And oh, the denial that I was in about my own drinking and drug use. Maybe some of you know what denial stands for, D-E-N-I-A-L. Don't even notice it's a lie. And I didn't. I was the captain of my ship, and it sank like the Titanic. But fortunately, I was one of the lucky ones to grab onto the life raft that came my way. And I grabbed onto it for dear life, and I said, God, please help me. I mean it. I'm going to die unless I get help right now. And I got help. I reached out to the one person I knew in a 12-step program. And when I called him, he said, oh, thank God, Laurie. I've been expecting this call for a long time. And he introduced me to a woman in a 12-step program who went on to become a very influential person in my life. And so it has gone for the last 10 years. When I first got sober, people noticed a difference in me right away. They said, did you lose weight? Is your hair blonder? I mean, after all, I was at Fox News, and you know everyone's blonde on Fox. Did you get your eyes done? Someone asked me. Now, there may come a day where I do decide to get my eyes done, but it wasn't any of that. I was sober, and I looked and sounded completely different. And I gotta be honest, at first it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns and lollipops. The first few weeks while I was detoxing were pretty brutal. Anyone in this room who has ever been through detox, you know what I'm talking about. It is physically painful. But guess what? My life got better because I stopped drinking, and it got better almost overnight. A few months after I gave up drinking, my mother and I went on a vacation to this wonderful little island in the Bahamas called Harbor Island. Maybe some of you have been lucky enough to go there. And we were in a boat, and my mother looked at me and she said, oh, Laurie, it's so good to have you back. Because I'd been gone for a really long time. The rewards of sobriety come in so many ways. Some of them are small, but they're not insignificant, like waking up today sober at the Four Seasons. Drinking coffee in my robe in bed with my best friend who's visiting from Key Largo. I mean, what a gift. I remember everything I do and everything I did. I remember every conversation I have with people. I remember what I did last night, which for Pippa and me was putting on our robes and ordering room service. That's what we did last night. In the old days, I would have said, okay, what kind of trouble can we get into in town? Instead, last night, we put on our robes and we ate room service at 8 o'clock last night. We're asleep by 10. That's a good night. I have been fortunate enough to travel around the country to speak to all different kinds of groups of people. I have consulted with the White House Office on National Drug Control Policy. I moderated a panel at the White House 2 years ago. If you told me that one day the Obama administration or any administration would want my help with something, I would have laughed. But they did want my help, and they did want my perspective. The relationships I have with the people in my life are solid. They're good. The relationship I have with family members is very strong. With my friends, beautiful. I've gotten so much support since I made my decision 10 years ago to get sober. And for everyone in this room, you do know someone who's in trouble. And everyone in this room, I hope, understands the gravity of this disease and why it is so important to support groups like CARP to help people who cannot help themselves. Because as I said earlier, too many people are dying, and they don't have to. Whenever somebody asks me, "Are you having a good day, Laurie?" I can say almost without question, yes, I am. Because I woke up sober, with a clear head and a clear heart, open to the joy and the possibility that every day brings. And for me, the possibility is walking on the beach later. That's a good afternoon. Spending the day with you fine people. Getting that privilege and that honor to share my message of hope and help, and to try to educate you, and to thank you for the support that you're giving our community by being here today. I cannot emphasize enough that every single thing I have in my life today is because I'm sober. Every single thing. In closing, I would like to be classy and quote Led Zeppelin. More specifically, Stairway to Heaven. And I know every single person in this room knows that song. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. 10 years ago, I decided to change the road I was on. It was by far the best decision I ever made in my life. I'm not the only one who's made that decision. I am among 25 million other great Americans who share this journey with me. According to Carl Jung, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And I chose to become a woman who lives in sobriety, free of intoxicants, each and every day, one day at a time. Thank you so much for letting me speak to you today. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.